Well, Gary, the Olympics in Milan were meant to showcase sport at its highest level. We talked about that quite a bit last week. But instead, they're facing a growing wave of political protests from activists, advocacy groups, and geopolitical demonstrators.
Yeah, and it's raising an old question that never seems to go away. Can the Olympics ever truly stay apolitical? I have found over the years that the Olympics, unfortunately, the politics involved and the crap that's involved in trying to get the venues completed on time and all of that, and now more than ever, the increasing cost of security for the games, to me, it has just taken away from what the athletes are accomplishing. It's almost like that they've become sort of second fiddle versus everything else. And of course, in Europe, they don't mess around when they start demonstrations. And they've had demonstrations, and there's just a gaggle of various groups associated with these protests. The environmentalists, and there are people walking around with cardboard trees. They're upset over the number of trees that were cut down for some of the runs for the skiing and sledding and everything, and then for some of the other venues, the environmental disruption that went on. And then you've got people protesting about the amount of money spent on these games versus where the money could be better spent to help people. And then you have the people who are really upset because ICE is there as part of the security team.
Right.
And I kind of get where they're coming from there. Why ICE? Why not send some National Guard over? Some of the National Guard over. But ICE, that'd be the last thing anybody with a little lick of sense would do.
Even a private security firm. I mean, why send ICE out there unless you wanted to stir up some sorry about the expression, stir up shit? I mean, why send them there to create controversy? Anyway, that's just my thinking on that matter.
Well, no, exactly. So I did go through, and I did manage to grab some clips. And wait till you see this. Like, I won't say anymore. Just watch and be prepared for a lot of noise. Okay, that was one, and here's the other one. Oh. We're not getting any audio, but it's the same banging and crackling. And actually, you're lucky you're not getting it. But this is the police finally. They've had enough, and they're moving in.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. The Europeans don't fool around with their protests.
Nope. There were hundreds of people in that protest. And here they go. And the police, they were outnumbered, but they had the big water cannon truck as well. But they moved in and moved them back down the street. But look at the smoke and everything. And this was near, from what I understand, this was near the Olympic Village.
Mm-hmm.
And, okay, we all have a right to protest. But what I was watching there, and as I say, I watched a lot of video of that particular, that was Saturday night.
Right.
From different angles. And like, I don't know if you caught it, but in the first clip, there was a guy holding kind of like this box kind of thing, and he had trigger on each side, and he was just pushing, and that's what was firing out those fireworks, and they were just
Hmm.
all over the place, and they were throwing smoke bombs, and some of the explosions on the smoke bombs, and I think the police throwing back some flash bombs as well, right? But it was like watching a war movie.
Right.
Meantime, I'm sitting there thinking, and what was happening at the Olympics on Saturday? I don't know, because I was sidewinded, by this.
Right.
That to me, again, goes back to some of the pro Palestinian rallies that we had here in Montreal and elsewhere
Hmm.
in Canada.
Right.
Very, 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 this is very well organized and obviously very well funded.
Funded for sure.
Very well funded.
Well, you
Which,
know what? Somebody, I mean, whoever organized this, I mean, they're not stupid. They know that the entire world is watching the Olympics. At least, the majority of the northern hemisphere watching the Winter Olympics, and then we've got the smattering of the southern hemisphere as well. A lot of Aussies and some of these smaller nations watching. Um, where would you want your views and your feelings to be demonstrated and get the biggest bang for the buck when it comes to people watching the Olympics or any other major event? And it's like I mentioned last week, the spirit of the Olympics. If we can all just focus on what it actually means and what Pierre de Coubertin wanted the Olympics to accomplish, the world would be such a better place, no question about it. However, there are so many issues in the world right now that are of significant importance that continue to try to offset major events like the Olympics, good spirited events like the Olympics. And you know what? Protests are really nothing new to the Olympics, Gary. My memory fails me right now, but as I know that at every Olympic there was some sort of a demonstration. I remember in the Sochi Olympics, there were demonstrations specific to the LGBTQ crackdown. A lot of dissidents there and a lot of protests by tourists actually there during the games because they know they're not going to get arrested by Russian militia. So they protested. So every Olympics has got its own set of issues to contend with from a protest perspective. But absolutely, Gary, the budget that goes into providing the necessary security for for the Olympics is astronomical. It must take up anywhere between 30% of the entire budget of the operation during the event, which is really significant. It's a necessary evil, but that's just the way of the world today, So I'm not surprised by the protests. I usually take a look and see, well, what exactly are you trying to protest, and am I getting your message? The violence and the property damage. You know what? I don't get your message. I don't support anything you're trying to accomplish. I already know what you're trying to protest, and hopefully we as individuals will do as much as we can to try to support the good things in this world. You know what? I don't like the trees being cut down either. I understand the conservationists and their distaste for what was actually happening, but resorting to violence, I'm never behind these people when they do that.
no, Eddie, here are three questions. Like, should protests be allowed at Olympic venues? No. Are the games
Right.
an unavoidable political stage? Yes, if handled properly. And how should organizers balance security versus free expression? You don't worry about
Right.
free expression. They're on the other side of the fence. You have to
Mhm.
have a certain, here we go, level of security. You've been vetted. If you're buying tickets, you have to be vetted. And only those with the official tickets and security passes will be allowed beyond the gates. Anyone else, you're on the outside.
Mhm.
I sit here sometimes and ask myself, why are we having discussions about things that are so basic, so common sense? It doesn't take an expert to figure this out. No, protests should not be allowed at the Olympic venues. They're there, it's a sporting competition.
Yeah.
Period.
Well, that kind of begs a question then. They had to have known this was coming. I mean, if they've got any level of intelligence and counterintelligence, they should have been better prepared for this particular protest before it actually happened. You would think so. There was a failure somewhere in security, or they just basically ignored it and thought, well, we'll just deal with it. It happened. It happened, which is it's a stain on Italy's producing the Olympic Games. I mean, all the investments aside from it, the Olympics are happening regardless of what the protesters would like to see or would not like to see. And there's a time. I mean, the entire purpose of the Olympics, even in the ancient days, wars were actually stopped. Wars were actually stopped in ancient Greece so people can participate in peace. And sometimes opposing soldiers were competing. This is the whole thing, and it's just unfortunate in today's world that the population, the citizens of the world, can't put their differences aside and actually allow the athletes to compete. And we talk always about we during like for this particular show, a particular element is can politics stay out of the Olympics? I think with every subsequent Olympics, the politics associated with it and the political issues around the world are going to take center stage more and more often than either of us would like to see, Gary. To tell you the truth, I mean, look, Russia's invasions of the Ukraine. The Russians haven't participated in the Olympics since the Sochi Olympics in 2014 when they first invaded Crimea. So okay, that's let's use that as a benchmark, right? Well, where does it stop from there? I mean, there are many countries committing atrocities today. Are all those countries barred from international competition? No. And you kind of say to yourself, well, why no? Is it politics? Is it money? Is it trade relations? What gives? So you either ban everybody that shouldn't be there, and it's going to be a mini Olympics, and I don't think too many countries would be participating because there's things that are not right in every country in the world. Or like where do you draw the line? The Russians are not there. And if you looked at the opening ceremonies, as fans of the Olympics, I mean, even to a large degree, if you looked at the opening, if you listen to watch the opening ceremonies, I mean, the athletes are there to compete. They're there with any kind of political affiliation, zero. They're there to compete. They train their butts off for 4 years, right? Politics doesn't play into the equation, I don't think. And you have these 6 Israeli athletes walking into the stadium in Italy, and they were booed. I mean, it was clearly audible, and my heart went out to those athletes. I go, oh my goodness, that is so that is just that just I just felt for the athletes. Then, by the same token, you kind of listen to people in Italy and Europe who were aware of what's going on in the world, deciding to voice their protest by boos and jeering, whistles. In Europe, it's a lot of people whistle instead of
Yeah.
boo. They whistle. They voice their displeasure, knowing full well that the rest of the world is watching, and they want people to know that Italy is aware of what's going on. And not fair to the athletes, but it's just Europe protesting what's been going on in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And then, as the evening progressed, I didn't really hear anything from any other country except in comes the United States of America. And you know what? I didn't hear all that much booing or whistling. Just a lot of cheering, okay? Until the shot pans to Vance and his wife. And I mean, it was clear. They booed and whistled and jeered him incessantly, like really heavily. And of course, I was watching the CBC feed, so we got it as it happened.
yeah,
And I actually watched clips of the NBC feed after the fact, and like kind of like show it for 3 or 4 seconds, and where the hell is cheering coming from? And then after doing some further research, they actually put applause in to to to
yeah.
to uh, to dull out the booing. But the point I'm trying to make, Gary, is athletes should be cheered at that particular point in time. I know you and I are never going to be convincing a major population like the Italian sports fan not to boo, but or Canadian sports fans for that fact, when the national anthem of the states is being played in hockey arenas. You know what? It's athletes, especially the Olympics. There are athletes that participate once every 4 years. They're not everyday professionals making millions and millions and millions of dollars every week. Um, Honor and respect the athletes at the Olympics. That's what I always say. There's no point booing them there. It's not going to do anything except make the social media feeds, and the memes will come out, and whatnot, But I just felt bad for the athletes that did get booed. The only ones I heard getting booed were the Italians. I've been watching the Olympics quite a bit, and really I haven't seen any sort of animosity towards the athletes. Doesn't matter what country they were coming from. Israel, Australia, South Africa, the Congo, or Jamaica, Israel, or the United States of America. Genuinely, they're all being encouraged and cheered, and that's the spirit of the Olympics, Gary. And it's just unfortunate. A, it costs so much. B, that the message of the Olympics is being lost with every consecutive Olympic that occurs, and
Well,
extremely expensive Olympics, as you mentioned on the outset.
well, now that you mention the message, what is the message of the Olympics now?
What is or what should it be?
what
Uh,
what is right now? Never mind what it should be. What is the message of the Olympics right now?
I'm an optimist, so I would think the message from the Olympics is that we are here to compete as athletes of the world, representing the world as best as we possibly could through participation in sports, and respect for your competition. Isn't that pretty much what we'd like to see in the world as optimists? Countries competing with each other in fair play, and equally respect them and their views, and let's all be happy and kumbaya. But in the world, that's not going to happen. It never has. In the Olympics, it's just unfortunate that it doesn't happen. And well,
Yeah.
and then as we're heading towards the closing of the show, there's a running joke that God created people, God created Canada, and Canada are going to be very peaceful people, and then he realized, yeah, wait until I drop the puck. Something to that
yeah.
effect, right? So yeah, the Canadians and the Canadians played their first Olympic game on Thursday, so that should be interesting. Our ladies team lost to the United States 5-0, so they got their game handed to them. But there was always the playoffs, and I guess look, when the competition gets really rough and tough, and usually doesn't get any rougher and tougher than in ice hockey. We're certainly not going to see what we saw in the Four Nations tournament, where in the first 9 seconds, Canada, in the preliminary round between Canada and the U.S., they fought 3 times in 9 minutes. You know what? That will not happen in the Olympics. There are consequences for actions in the Olympics, and the rules of the Olympics are very strict about sportsmanship and camaraderie and respect. That is going to be upheld during the tournament, because there is no turning back. It'll cost your country a potential run at the medal. So it'll be a very interesting ice hockey tournament, both for the women and especially for the men, to see how it pans out. And at the end of the day, I'd like to continue seeing the camaraderie amongst the athletes. And I don't know if you saw, Gary. I think you did. In terms of protest, I mean, we have the group protest by activists and whatnot on the outside of the Olympic venues. In a very subtle way, there's always been some form of protest at every Olympic since day one, that can't go unnoticed. in my lifetime, and the one that I continuously bring up to mind from a memory perspective is uh, one of the two Olympic events, the 1936 Berlin events, wasn't a
Mhm.
form of protest, but the fact that Jesse Owens won so many gold medals and under difficult circumstances in front of Mein Führer Adolf Hitler in his own stadium, when all of his propaganda was basically saying the Aryan white race is supreme, and black people and people of color were basically imbeciles and insignificant. Just by him winning was a constant form of protest out in Nazi Germany. The second one that comes to mind, Gary, is in Mexico City, 1968, Black Power. I'm just going to read the names here. In the '68 Summer Olympics, two sprinters, Tommy Smith and John Carlos, raised their black gloves, if you remember that, in their fists during the medal ceremonies in the 200-meter race, and they were basically protesting against racial injustice in the United States. And I'm sure a lot of people will recognize or reflect back on that particular scene when they're standing on the podium with their fists raised. So that was considered a significant form of protest, and basically the rest of the world looking at the United States and saying, "Wow, racism really does still exist there," which was not a good shine for the United States. And then recently, in these Olympics, the Ukrainian skeleton racer, that's the one where you get on the toboggan and you go downhill like a psychopath without any brakes.
Yeah.
Vladislav Harashchevich, I hope I got his name right, wasn't a form of protest. It was more a form of honor. On his helmet, he actually had pictures embossed of his friends and the athletes of the Ukrainian Olympic team that died in the Ukrainian conflict with Russia as a tribute to them.
Yeah.
And the International Olympic Committee were saying, "Oh, that's a no, 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 no." And he's basically saying it's not a political statement. I am honoring my friends who have died in the war. And I don't think he was sanctioned or punished or anything like that. I'd have to follow up on my news. And then the next day, another skeleton racer. Her name was she's a loser, yeah. Olena Smaha. What she did is on her gloves that have spikes where she can actually get herself moving. She actually had written on there, "Remembrance is not a violation." So she's not really protesting politically, but she's making a statement. So there are subtle ways of getting your message across and point across without insulting anyone. And I think some of the athletes are doing it. But here's the best one, Gary. My last one, okay? Gus Kenworthy. He's competing for Great Britain. He posted a graphic anti-ice message, basically written in snow with his urine. Now,
Oh, right. I heard something about that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
if that isn't ballsy, I don't know
He,
what is. Yeah, that's exactly what he did, and U.S. lawmakers are all pissed off at him, take his uniform off and whatever else. The guy's making a protest, and here are the Olympic rules. You cannot wear anything on your uniform or have any signs with you at during competition or directly in the venue while you're competing. You are not allowed. Okay. Now all of this happened outside of Olympic venues, right? So this gentleman who decided to relieve himself in fashion. He did it outside of any venue, and he wasn't competing. So I don't think they're going to get any sanctions directly applied to him by the Olympic Committee. But there are ways for athletes to get around this, and you know what? I think their messages are very profound, and they're very clear that they're just not going to take what's going on in the world sitting down. And hats off to them. I am really proud when somebody stands up for their rights and for justifiable cause
and I
in a
totally
peaceful
understand.
in a peaceful manner.
Yeah. I totally understand where you're coming from, Eddie, but we will tend to, I have to disagree to a degree.
Okay.
Actually, and I'll tell you why. The same as the protests outside, and
Hmm.
and they shouldn't be allowed anywhere near the Olympic venues, what at all, just period. But the athletes are there to compete, and not, to me, not make any kind of a political statement. You should be concentrating strictly on what you're doing as far as your competition is concerned. After it's over, and especially if you've won a gold medal or a couple of gold medals, where the spotlight will be on you both internationally and then nationally and locally when you finally do get home, use the time then to make your statement from a political standpoint or from a rights standpoint. But while you're in the venue, compete. Focus on the competition and nothing else. Compete. And then go outside after the fact. Or go out and take on the people who are kept outside because of their demonstrations.
Right.
But it's what's going to happen is it may be a bit of a novelty to for a lot of people now to tune in, watch 10 or 15 seconds of a protest going through the streets, or a competition, or an athlete on TikTok, the short making TikTok of whatever statement they made after winning their medal. But that's your 8 to 15 seconds of fame, and it's gone.
Right.
And by the time they've scrolled to the next TikTok, you're out of their mind. So you've accomplished nothing. Do it after the fact.